Hey, thank you so much for being a part today. Rudy and I are feeling the pressure of trying to communicate this. It's a great passage, and please dig into it yourself, all right? We're now in chapter 11 again, and I'm going to read to you a couple of verses. This is really Rudy's expertise, so I'm going to turn to him and let him go, all right? It says, on that day, the root of Jesse shall stand as a signal to his peoples, and the nations shall inquire of him, and his dwelling shall be glorious. On that day, the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant that is left of his people, from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Ethiopia, from Elam, from Shinar, from Hamath, and from the coastlands of the sea. He'll raise a signal for the nations, and will assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. The jealousy of Ephraim shall depart, and the hostility of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not be jealous of Judah, and Judah shall not be hostile towards Ephraim. Just make a note, Ephraim is a pet name God has for the northern kingdom of Israel, and Judah is the southern kingdom. They're all Israel, but they divided because of a civil war. With that little explanation, Rudy, why don't you talk to us a little bit about this?
Well, we see that that happened starting in about 1880.
Right.
And Zionism kind of started taking root in Eurasia. And when the Assyrian Empire had conquered the northern kingdom, they replaced other peoples from the north into their southern part of their kingdom, and took the northern part of Israel's people and replanted them in the northern part of their kingdom, which ends up being the Soviet Union, like I said a couple of days ago, around the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. But what this passage is talking about...
Let's be clear. So they took a group of people out of what we would call Israel today, Jewish people, we call it today, and they moved him over to an area transplanted them. And in turn, they brought a bunch of people back and they put them in that area, which was one of their methods of conquering people. You couldn't stir up those people to in a rebellion if they were transplanted somewhere else, right?
This kind of gets a little bit of time back to the Syrophoenician woman that Jesus was talking about. There were a remnant of the very poorest Jews left in the north, that they were mixed, and that's why the Judites basically didn't really consider them the same people groups.
So just so you all catch that picture, that woman was a woman who came and begged Jesus to heal her daughter, and the disciples wanted to brush her off, and Jesus showed his love to her as a very important people, even though maybe culturally she wasn't accepted.
Right. And so, but this kind of is what's being talked about in here, in the situation on the ground, because it took 2,500 years for Ephraim and Judah not to be at odds with each other. We only saw that happen when Israel became a nation in 48-49. Never happened in history prior to that.
So the people, I'm sorry, I just keep drive us home because it's very important. They had been divided, and then they were further divided, and it took all those years up until the time you and I were born,
right,
for Israel to come back to the land.
Right, and so the problem is, we think prophecy is supposed to happen pretty soon. We're told that Jesus is coming back soon. Well, it's already been 2,000 years on that one.
Right.
But we do see this prophecy unfolding now, because that's where these Jewish people came to repopulate Israel. They came from the Soviet Union, they came from Poland, they came from Belarus, they came from Azerbaijan, slowly but surely returning back to their home. Because it didn't happen for really 3,000 years almost, we kind of think that we don't understand prophecy, but that's one of the lenses that we have to look at prophecy through, is that a day is 1,000 years to the Lord. That, what he's talking about, only happened 2.5 days ago. So
Right, to the Lord.
to the Lord, so like it was Wednesday. And I know that that sounds irreverent, but it is true, because there is a way to look at history in 1,000-year segments. And those segments are very much like a 7-day week. No one in history ever counted a week, used 7 to do anything with until the 4th commandment.
Right. Can I just stick in a thought here? For us to hear in terms of 1,000-year increments, we are so, what about me in this country? Well, what about what's going on in my life now, someone might say. And the big theme here is you cannot trust yourself for immediate gratification. You've got to trust the Lord for the long haul. And there have been faithful people who have trusted God for the long haul, and God was able to do things with them. But it was all about me in the here and now. We will make the foolish mistakes of the people that Isaiah is trying to say, don't do that.
Well, for me, I make those same foolish mistakes hundreds of times a day.
Right.
And so the human condition hasn't really changed.
Right.
In the book of Revelation it says, we're saved by the blood of the Lamb and our testimonies.
Right.
Well, in the beginning I wondered, how could my testimony
Right.
have some relationship to the blood of the Lamb?
Right.
Well, he said so it must.
Right.
And in thinking it through, is like God actually made my testimony.
Right.
Everything I am, really he made. So what's going on there is we have to remember what God has done in our lives.
Right.
Now, when you're reading prophecy, that's an important touchstone, because we can identify with the pride and arrogance of other people. But I think one of the things that prophecy is trying to illuminate for us is the pride and arrogance in nations that God actually allows to happen,
Right.
so that we would understand the human condition hasn't changed.
Right.
And we're bombarded by the theory of evolution. But to tell you the truth, in my thinking through this, you would think that pride or arrogance, either one, which they're kind of the same thing, it should have, in the process of evolution, it should have changed.
Right.
But it did not. And ultimately, that is our biggest debating point against the evolutionists, that the human condition hasn't changed.
Right. One of my books that I read said, we put a man on the moon, but our morality hasn't improved since the days of Amos the prophet. And with that, we need to stop. God bless you. Rudy, thank you so much. God bless you. And God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll be looking at some tough chapters. Read them, study them, get ready. Again, we're serving up the appetizers. You dig into the main meal. God bless you.